They said humans were fragile, soft creatures from a death world that somehow survived by luck. The alien instructor laughed as he boasted about crushing human soldiers in battle, but when one quiet girl from Earth stepped forward, the laughter stopped. The air grew still. In that moment, the galaxy learned, humanity doesn't need strength in numbers, just one is enough. The arrogant lecturer, the Academy Hall Commander Zelak, stood before his class with 3 of his 4 arms folded across his scaled chest. The Intergalactic Defense Academy's lecture hall buzzed with the quiet attention of 30 students from 15 different worlds. Zelak was a Vorthian, a species known for their military prowess and imposing physical presence. His dark green scales caught the artificial light as he moved across the platform, each step deliberate and commanding. Today's lesson was one of his favorites, the one where he taught young cadets about realistic threat assessment, the one where he stripped away the myths and legends that clouded proper military judgment. "Let me tell you about humans," Zelak began, his voice carrying easily through the translation devices every student wore. "The galaxy has built up quite a mythology around them. Deathworlders, they call them, survivors from a planet that supposedly tried to kill them at every turn." A Kolarian student in the 3rd row, her crystalline body refracting light in nervous patterns, raised a tentative appendage. "But Commander Zelak, the classification reports confirm Earth as a Class 11 death world. The gravity alone is 1.3 times standard. The atmospheric composition, the temperature variations, the predator density." Yes, Zelak interrupted with a dismissive wave of his upper right arm. "I have read the reports. I have also fought humans. There is a considerable difference between reading data and facing reality in combat." The tale of victory. The classroom settled into attentive silence as Zelak began pacing, a habit he had developed during his 20 years of teaching. Before the academy, he had served in the Vorthian Stellar Guard for 3 decades. His service record was impressive, decorated with commendations and medals that he displayed proudly in his office. 8 years ago, during the disputed territories conflict in the outer reaches, my tactical unit encountered a human reconnaissance team, Zelak continued, his voice taking on the practiced tone of a storyteller. "Intelligence had warned us about their presence. 6 humans fully armed operating from a forward observation post." He paused for effect, noting how several students leaned forward in their seats. "The propaganda would have you believe these creatures are unstoppable, that their Deathworld origin makes them superior warriors, that their adaptability and resilience make them dangerous beyond measure." Zelak's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "I am here to tell you the truth." A Kryn student, his fur bristling with interest, spoke up. "What happened, Commander?" "We approached their position using standard suppression tactics," Zelak explained, pulling up a holographic display of the terrain. "The humans had established a defensive perimeter, but their technology was inferior to ours. Their energy shields flickered under our plasma barrage. Their return fire was kinetic-based, primitive projectile weapons that could barely penetrate our battle armor." The embellished account Zelak walked among the tiered seating now, his presence commanding attention from every student. The first human fell within minutes of engagement, a clean plasma strike to the torso. Their biological softness made them vulnerable. No exoskeleton, no natural armor, just flesh and bone beneath thin protective gear. He gestured with his lower arms. "The second tried to flank our position. Brave perhaps, but foolish. My second in command eliminated him before he cleared 20 meters." The Quilarian student's light patterns had shifted to pale yellow, a sign of distress in her species. "And the others?" "The remaining 4 attempted to hold their position," Zelak continued. "They coordinated well, I will give them credit for that. Their communication was efficient. Their tactical decisions were sound given their limited options, but sound tactics cannot overcome fundamental biological inferiority." He returned to his platform, pulling up images of various species' anatomical comparisons. "Look at this. Human bone structure. Calcium-based, relatively brittle compared to our crystalline skeletal systems or the Kryn's reinforced cartilage framework. Their muscle density is adequate for their gravity environment, but unremarkable compared to species from higher gravity worlds. Their reaction time, while faster than some species, is measurably slower than Vorthians or Zenthrak warriors." The unintended audience Zelak was building to his conclusion, his favorite part of the lecture, When the door to the lecture hall opened with a soft pneumatic hiss, a human walked in. She was smaller than Zelak had expected, standing perhaps 1.7 meters tall. Her skin was a medium brown tone, and her dark hair was pulled back in a functional style. She wore the standard Academy cadet uniform, the gray and blue fabric fitting her compact frame. What struck Zelak most were her eyes, dark brown and utterly calm as they swept across the room and settled on him. "You are late," Zelak said, his tone sharp with disapproval. "Cadet Sarah Chen reporting." "Commander," she replied, her voice steady and clear. "My transport was delayed due to security processing. My service record required additional clearance verification." Several students turned to look at her with obvious curiosity. A human here at the Academy. It was unusual but not unprecedented. The Intergalactic Defense Academy accepted students from all member species of the Galactic Coalition. "Take a seat, Cadet Chen." Zelak gestured toward the back row. "We were just discussing human combat capabilities. Or rather, the lack thereof." Sarah moved up the stairs with fluid grace, her footsteps barely audible. She passed by students who watched her with various expressions of curiosity, wariness, and in some cases concern. She took her seat in the back row without comment, pulling out a data tablet and appearing ready to take notes. "As I was saying," Zelak continued, his attention returning to his lecture, "the final 4 humans in that engagement lasted another 30 minutes. They fought with determination, I will acknowledge that much. But determination without superior capability is merely prolonged failure. The challenge emerges." He walked closer to where Sarah sat, looking up at her position in the tiered seating. They called for reinforcements that never came. They attempted to negotiate, offering to share intelligence in exchange for safe passage. As if we would trust the word of humans. Zelak's mandibles clicked again. In the end, they died like any other species when faced with superior force. Bleeding, broken, defeated, Sarah had not moved. She sat with perfect stillness, her data tablet resting on the desk before her, her hands folded calmly. But something in her eyes had changed, a subtle shift that Zelak noticed but could not quite identify. "Do you have something to add, Cadet Chen?" Zelak asked, his tone carrying a challenge. "Perhaps you wish to defend your species' overrated reputation?" Sarah looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Just a question, Commander. Proceed." "This encounter you described 8 years ago in the outer reaches. 6 human reconnaissance team members. Forward observation post, 30-minute engagement." Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. "Can you tell me the designation of their unit?" The specificity of her question caught Zelak off guard. "I do not recall the specific unit designation. It was classified information in any case. Was it perhaps Reconnaissance Team 7, 4th Marine Division, operating out of Forward Base Meridian?" Sarah asked. And now there was something cold beneath her calm tone. The classroom had gone completely silent. Every student was watching this exchange with rapt attention. "How would you know that?" Zelak demanded. Sarah stood slowly, her movements deliberate. Despite being significantly smaller than Zelak, despite being alone among alien species, she seemed to fill the space around her with quiet intensity. "Because, Commander Zelak, one of those 6 humans was my brother, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, communications specialist. 26 years old. He was 3 months away from coming home to Earth to meet his newborn daughter for the first time." The air in the lecture hall seemed to crystallize. "And based on your description of the engagement," Sarah continued, her voice still calm but now carrying an edge like a blade being drawn from its sheath, "I believe you are either exaggerating your account for dramatic effect, or you are describing a different encounter entirely, because Reconnaissance Team 7's after-action reports, which I accessed before coming to this academy, tell a very different story." Zelak felt his scales ripple, an involuntary response to the shift in dynamics he could not quite explain. "Your allegations are baseless," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Then prove it," Sarah said simply. "You stand here teaching students about human weakness, about how easy we are to defeat. You use my brother's death as a teaching example to demonstrate our inferiority." She descended the stairs slowly, each step measured. "Demonstrate it, Commander. Combat simulation right here, right now. Show everyone exactly how weak humans really are." The challenge hung in the air like a live explosive. Zelak should have declined. Every instinct developed over decades of survival should have been screaming at him to refuse, to deflect, to maintain his position of authority without putting it to the test. But his pride, his ego, and his absolute certainty in his superiority over this small human female drowned out every whisper of caution. "Very well, Cadet Chen," Zalak heard himself say. "Combat Hall 2, 1 hour. "I will be happy to provide a practical demonstration." Sarah nodded once. "1 hour, Commander. I will be there." She turned and walked out of the lecture hall, leaving behind 30 shocked students and one instructor who was beginning to suspect he had made a terrible mistake. 47 seconds. The arena news of the challenge spread through the Intergalactic Defense Academy with remarkable speed. By the time Commander Zalak arrived at Combat Hall 2, precisely on schedule because he prided himself on punctuality, over 300 spectators had crowded into the observation galleries. Students from every department, faculty members who should have been teaching classes, and even maintenance staff who had abandoned their duties, were all gathered to witness what was already being called either the greatest teaching, demonstration in Academy history, or the most catastrophic error in judgment ever made by an instructor. Combat Hall 2 was a circular arena 40 meters in diameter, designed for training exercises and combat simulations. The walls were reinforced to contain weapons fire up to Class 5 energy weapons. The floor was shock-absorbent composite material, marked with tactical zone indicators. Safety protocols were in place. Medical teams were standing by, and the arena marshal, a neutral Korvaxian official, had already reviewed the rules of engagement. Zalak entered the arena to a mixture of cheers and nervous murmurs from the crowd. He had changed into his combat harness, a lightweight but sturdy apparatus that supported his natural scaled armor without restricting his movement. No weapons, of course. This was a demonstration of physical combat capability, not weapons proficiency. Besides, he would not need weapons against a single human who probably weighed less than half his mass. He moved to his designated position, all 4 arms loose and ready, his powerful legs planted firmly on the composite floor. Around the observation gallery, he could see betting pools being organized. The odds were overwhelmingly in his favor. 25-1, someone shouted. 30-1, another voice countered. The warnings ignored, a familiar voice called out from the gallery. "Zalak, a word before you begin." Colonel Thren, one of Zalak's former military colleagues who now taught advanced strategic planning, had descended to the arena rail. The old Vorthian scales had faded to gray with age, but his eyes were still sharp. "What is it, Thren?" Zalak asked, trying to hide his impatience. "I have a lesson to teach." "That is what concerns me," Thren said quietly. "Zalak, I accessed what I could of Cadet Chen's service record. The public portions only, but what I found is troubling." "Troubling how?"
She has 17 combat deployments across 5 different conflict zones.
"She holds advanced certifications in 4 different martial disciplines. She was an instructor at the Earth Alliance Marine Combat Training Center." Thren's voice dropped lower, "And there are portions of her record that are classified at levels I cannot access, even with my security clearance. Sections marked with Special Operations Command seals." Zalak waved a dismissive arm. "She is human, Thren. I have fought humans. I know their limitations. Do you?" Thren's eyes locked onto his. "Or do you know the limitations of the specific humans you encountered in one engagement 8 years ago?" "Zalak, this feels wrong." She walked into that challenge too easily, too calmly, like someone who knows something you do not. "Your concern is noted," Zalak said stiffly. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have a demonstration to conduct." Thren's scales rippled in a gesture of resignation. "Do not say I did not warn you, old friend." The arrival, the door on the opposite side of the arena opened and Sarah Chen walked in. She had changed out of her academy uniform into simple combat training gear. Black pants, a fitted gray shirt, and worn boots that looked like they had seen considerable use. No armor, no protective gear, no weapons. She looked impossibly small standing in the vast arena, but she moved with the same fluid confidence she had shown in the lecture hall. Sarah walked to her designated position and began a brief warm-up routine. She rolled her shoulders, rotated her neck, bent forward to touch her toes with effortless flexibility. She performed a series of movements that Zalak's cultural database identified as stretching exercises, preparing her muscles for activity. She looked utterly relaxed, like she was preparing for a morning exercise session, rather than a combat demonstration. against an opponent with twice her mass and twice her arms. The arena marshal moved to the center circle between them. Standard demonstration rules apply, the marshal announced, his voice amplified throughout the hall. Combat continues until submission, incapacitation, or until I call a halt for safety reasons. Lethal force is strictly prohibited. Intentionally lethal strikes will result in immediate disqualification and criminal charges. Medical teams are standing by. Combatants, do you understand and accept these terms? Accepted, Zelak said confidently. Accepted, Sarah said, and there was that small smile again, the one that had unsettled Zelak in the lecture hall. Combatants, take your ready positions. Zelak dropped into his primary combat stance, weight distributed evenly across his powerful legs, his forearms positioned for both offense and defense. This was the stance that had served him through dozens of engagements, the foundation of Vorthian martial tradition. Sarah simply stood there, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose at her sides, weight slightly forward. She looked almost casual, but Zelak noticed her breathing was controlled. Her gaze was focused, and despite her relaxed appearance, there was a coiled readiness in her posture. The lesson begins. Begin! The arena marshal shouted. Zelak lunged forward with the explosive speed that Vorthian warriors were known for. His upper right arm shot toward Sarah's center mass, a strike designed to knock her back, to establish dominance immediately. His fist hit empty air. Sarah was not there anymore. She had moved, slipped to the side with a speed that Zelak's eyes barely registered, and suddenly she was inside his guard, far too close, moving in a way that seemed to flow around his defenses like water finding a crack. Her hand, small and seemingly fragile, locked onto his extended arm at the joint. Then she twisted, applying leverage in a direction his arm was never designed to move. Pain, sharp and shocking, shot through Zelak's neural pathways. He tried to bring his other arms around to dislodge her, but she was already moving again, flowing around his counter-strikes like smoke. Her legs swept out, hooked behind his forward limb, and pulled. Zelak's balance, perfect just a moment ago, disappeared. He stumbled, caught himself with his other legs. But that moment of instability was all she needed. Sarah's elbow, driven by muscles that had evolved to throw projectiles with lethal accuracy, slammed into the nerve cluster just below Zelak's primary sensory ridge. The impact sent signals cascading through his nervous system, disrupting his coordination. The crowd in the galleries erupted in shocked exclamations, but Zelak barely heard them over the sudden ringing in his auditory organs. The reality of Deathworld Zelak spun, all four arms lashing out in a combination strike that should have connected with something. Nothing. Sarah moved between his attacks like they were happening in slow motion, her body reading his movements and responding before he even completed them. Then her fist, compact and reinforced by a lifetime of high-gravity conditioning, drove into his thorax just below his primary lung. The air evacuated from Zelak's body in a wheeze. His natural scaled armor might as well have been decorative. The impact made his legs buckle. This was not possible. This was not happening. She was human. She was small. She was prey. Zelak rallied, forced himself upright, attempted a more cautious approach. He feinted with one arm, struck with another, while his lower arms prepared to grapple once she dodged. Sarah did not dodge. She stepped into his strike, absorbed it on her forearm in a block that redirected his momentum past her body. Then her other hand, palm open, drove upward into his mandibles with a strike that snapped his head back and made his vision blur. Zelak staggered backward, his balance compromised, his defensive training struggling to compensate for the systematic dismantling of his offense. Through his blurred vision, he saw Sarah following, relentless, economical, every movement precise and devastating. Her knee came up, caught him in the same nerve cluster she had struck before. His legs gave out completely. He hit the arena floor hard, the impact reverberating through his body. Move. Get up. Fight back. His body was not responding properly. Signals from his brain were reaching his limbs through what felt like thick mud. 47 seconds. Sarah dropped down, her weight negligible, but her position perfect. One knee pressed against his breathing spiracle, restricting his air. Her hand pressed against his throat where his secondary respiratory system was most vulnerable. Yield, she said quietly. The word meant only for him. Zelak's mandibles clicked weakly. He tried to throw her off, but his limbs would not cooperate. His forearms flailed uselessly against her immovable position. "I said yield," Sarah repeated, pressing just slightly harder. Not enough to cause damage, but enough to promise that she could. That she knew exactly how to end this permanently if she chose. "I yield," Zalak wheezed, the words bitter as poison. The arena marshal was already rushing forward, calling the match, but Sarah did not move immediately. She leaned down close enough that only Zalak could hear her next words. "Reconnaissance Team 7, she said softly. "Lieutenant Marcus Chen, Sergeant David Park, Corporal Jennifer Walsh, Specialist Robert Kim, Private First Class Luis Martinez, Private Sarah Okonkwo." She listed each name like a roll call. They were not just statistics, Commander. They were people. They had families. They had lives ahead of them. And you used their deaths as entertainment, as a teaching prop to make yourself look superior. Zalak's eyes widened, all four of them focusing on her face. "Marcus Chen was my brother," Sarah continued, her voice still quiet but carrying absolute conviction. "And after I received the news of his death, after I attended his memorial service and watched his infant daughter cry for a father she would never know, I spent 2 years tracking down every detail of what happened in the outer reaches that day." She finally stood, stepping off him, leaving Zalak gasping on the arena floor. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous, Commander?" Sarah asked, and now her voice carried across the silent combat hall. Every being in the gallery heard her. "It is not our death world. It is not our physical capabilities. It is that we remember. We carry our dead with us. Every single one. And when we find those responsible, we make absolutely certain they understand what they took from this universe." She turned toward the exit, then paused and looked back. "That took 47 seconds, Commander. 47 seconds against one unarmed human who was constrained by Academy regulations prohibiting lethal force." Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes carried cold fire. "Still think we are weak?" The aftermath. The medical team swarmed Zalak as Sarah walked out of Combat Hall 2. The crowd in the galleries was a chaos of excited chatter, shocked silence, and the sound of betting pools being settled. The footage was already spreading across the Academy network. Then the planetary network, then the galactic information web. Commander Zalak, decorated war hero and respected instructor, defeated in 47 seconds by a human half his size. Dr. Veln, an efficient Talaxian physician, scanned Zalak with medical instruments. Minor fracture in your upper right arm joint. Bruising to your nerve cluster, moderate concussion. Could have been much worse. The human showed remarkable precision, striking to disable rather than to cause permanent damage. Zalak said nothing. What could he say? Dean Korvath arrived 20 minutes later, his massive Ergothian frame filling the medical bay doorway. The dean's expression was a mixture of disappointment and something that might have been pity. "Cadet Sarah Chen," Korvath began without preamble, pulling out a data tablet. "Earth Alliance Marines, 17 combat deployments, decorated 4 times for valor under fire. Hand-to-hand combat instructor rating of master level, which in human military structure means she teaches other instructors how to teach combat. 3 years with the Special Operations Development Group, their elite special warfare unit. The portions of her record from that period are classified at levels that require intelligence clearance above my rank to access." Each word landed on Zalak like a physical blow. "You challenged one of the most highly trained combat specialists in the human military to a fight, Zalak, and you did so based on your encounter with a reconnaissance team 8 years ago, an engagement that our intelligence services have now flagged for review as a potential violation of multiple galactic conflict conventions." Zalak felt something crack inside his chest, something that had nothing to do with his physical injuries. "By tonight, everyone in this academy will know what happened today," Korvath continued. "The footage is already spreading. You have become a cautionary tale, Zalak, the instructor who underestimated a human and paid the price in 47 seconds. The dean moved toward the door, then paused. "You are on medical leave for 1 week. When you return, you will issue a formal apology to Cadet Chen and to your class. You will also attend mandatory training on species bias and cultural sensitivity. And Zalak, if I ever hear you using classified military engagements as teaching props again, You will spend the rest of your career teaching basic navigation to first-year cadets. Are we clear? Yes, Dean Korvath, Zalak whispered. The transformation. 3 weeks later, Zalak stood in his quarters staring at 5 photographs on his desk. He had obtained them through official channels, the service records and personal files of Reconnaissance Team 7. Lieutenant Marcus Chen smiled from his photograph, his arm around a woman holding a baby. Sergeant David Park was in his dress uniform, looking proud and young. Corporal Jennifer Walsh was laughing in hers, caught in a moment of joy. Specialist Robert Kim and the others, all with their own stories, their own families, their own futures that had been cut short. Zalak had spent the past 3 weeks reading everything he could about them. Not the tactical reports, not the casualty statistics, but the personal details. Their hopes, their dreams, their families who still mourned them 8 years later. He had also spent those weeks having nightmares. Every night he saw them clearly now, not as targets or enemy combatants, but as people. He heard their voices pleading for mercy, saw their faces in those final moments, and he woke each night with his scales rippling in distress, his breathing spiracles working overtime. Sarah Chen had not defeated him physically in that arena. She had done something far more devastating. She had forced him to see his victims as people, had stripped away the comfortable distance of military necessity, and made him confront the reality of what he had done. On his desk were 5 letters, carefully written, addressed to 5 families on Earth. Apologies that could never be enough, acknowledgments that came far too late, truth that would hurt but might provide some closure. Zalak did not know if sending them would help or would simply reopen old wounds, but he owed them that much. Owed it to the 6 humans he had killed, and to the one human who had taught him the most important lesson of his life in 47 seconds. The final lesson, the next day, Zalak returned to teaching. His class was smaller now. Many students had transferred to other sections, but those who remained watched him with different eyes, waiting to see if he had truly changed. Today we will discuss the importance of accurate intelligence gathering before any engagement. Zalak began, his voice lacking its former arrogant confidence, the critical necessity of understanding your opponent's actual capabilities, rather than relying on assumptions, stereotypes, or outdated information. He pulled up holographic displays showing various species combat statistics. Underestimating an opponent is one of the fastest paths to defeat, he continued. Physical size, species reputation, technological advantage, none of these factors guarantee victory. What matters is training, experience, adaptability, and most importantly, respect for your opponent's capabilities. In the back row, Sarah Chen sat quietly, taking notes. She attended his lectures twice a week now, usually offering insights that came from real combat experience rather than theoretical knowledge. She had accepted his apology with professional courtesy, had not gloated or extended his humiliation beyond that single demonstration. She had made her point. She did not need to twist the blade. Humans, Zalak said, and his mandibles barely twitched now when he spoke the word, are classified as Deathworlders for reasons that extend far beyond their planet's environmental challenges. They are survivors, adapters, and they carry their losses with them in a way that makes them extraordinarily formidable opponents. He paused, looking directly at Sarah. They are not weak. They are tempered, forged by a world that tried to kill them and failed, sharpened by losses that would break other species. And they remember. That memory, that refusal to forget, is perhaps their most dangerous trait. That night, Zalak sent the 5 letters, and for the first time in 3 weeks he slept without nightmares, though the weight of what he had done would stay with him for the rest of his life. 47 seconds had changed everything. And Commander Zalak finally understood what it truly meant when someone said humans were from a death world. They were not weak. They were patient, relentless, and when pushed, they would show you exactly why their world had tried so hard to kill them and failed. Respect the Deathworlders, especially the quiet ones who smile when you threaten them. Those are the truly dangerous ones,